Next, we've got Brandon Poole. Brandon is someone that I actually looked in LinkedIn because I was like, oh, no kidding, Brandon's presenting. And the first message I ever sent Brandon was June 22nd, 2020. And it said, hey, man, really cool talk you did with Jerry on whatever. And then a year later, I messaged him again. I was like, hey, man, that training thing you did with Jerry was awesome. And it's just really cool to see full circle. We're all in this room now from where this started back with what you were doing before, man. So freaking glad that you stuck with us. Like, beyond glad. But anyways, we got Brandon. He's going to come in and carry on talking about Doomsday in light of incident response.
All right, guys, this is going to be a tight timeline because this is an hour talk I had to strip down. So we're going to see if we can roll through this. All right, so quick question. Anyone here used to watch Doomsday Prepper on National Geographic Channel back in the day? That show was awesome, right? Yeah, I thought so too. That's what's inspired this talk. Today, you guys are going to learn to be cyber doomsday preppers, like all out. We're going to get compounds. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so like what I found in consulting, whatnot, a lot of people like they're not very good at like prepping for incidents. That's what we're going to talk about here today. Your incident response plan. So there's a bunch of stuff up here about me. It's supposed to say that I know what I'm doing. I absolutely have no idea what I'm doing. People just pay me thinking I know what I'm doing, but you know, it is what it is. But let's get going. So today we're going to take you to prepper school. Ooh, all right. So we're going to start off here with our syllabus because, you know, college class, college, you know. We're going to start with intro to incident response, then we're going to make you a prepper, then we're going to level you up, and then bug out bag actually got cut, so, yeah, so all right, let's get started. First part of the syllabus. So let's learn some cool stuff like English 101, some prepper incident response lingo. All right, so we got this event. You know, an event is any observable occurrence in a system or network. An example, user log and system crash, someone opening evil.exe, totally not malicious, right? And then we're going to define incident as an event or group of events that affect the confidentiality, integrity, availability. We've all heard this before, right? Right? All right. How many of you guys agree with this? Raise your hand. Man, you guys are just like either not into this or I don't know what. You guys are going to flunk my class. Guess what? This isn't a college class, so you're good. You're not going to flunk it. So, unfortunately, the college hates me and wants to pop up little pop-ups here. We don't actually get to define incidents anymore. A lot of this is because cyber insurance and regulatory things. If you use the word incident, it brings in auditors and all kind of other crazy stuff. So like that very vague definition of incident, we can't usually use it a lot of times, or we have to get lawyers involved to do this. Big place that this is like true is anyone here work in like power generation or anything like that, deal with like NERC-CIP? No? Okay. Well, if you ever do that, like an incident, especially on the power side, like it's all these fines and all this crazy stuff, so they use crazy definitions for incident. The other thing is security is about risk management. Business enablement's king. Like we don't really get to like, you know, do a bunch of stuff that's going to cause fines, like I was saying. Lawyers dictate the rules. Yeah. So let's go back. English 102. So an incident is whatever your lawyer tells you you need to do. And the old definition of incident, because, you know, we like the way it is, we just kind of changed the name to it, inverse security event. Cool beans. All right. Anyone in here not a Pulp Fiction fan? So get out. You don't say the B word, and that's breach. That is because this has very specific like legal consequences. Like if you put breach somewhere in an email and then someone sues you and then, you know, you go through discovery and it gets out of there and someone has breach in there, it gets you into a world of trouble because all of the laws, at least here in the United States, are all around the word breach. That is because this has very specific, kind of like wonderful monitoring you have to do and stuff like that. So never use the word breach, like, especially in written communication, not even verbal communication. Because if you say breach, someone else uses the word breach, puts it in writing, doesn't know any better, you're going to have a bad day. All of the laws, at least here in the United States, are all around the word. Does this look familiar to everybody? So I'm going to say something very, very I don't know, fighting words, I guess you could say. These here are usually like the incident response models everyone's familiar with. They really don't exist. I can tell you, having done incident response like a long time, usually you're in multiple of these stages at any given point in time. That's why you have Pickerel over here. You have the NIST one over here where they kind of like consolidate that stuff. It's not clean. You're in multiple stages at once. Think of it more kind of like an OSI model, a reference model. It's not the actual way incidents work, but it's a good way to kind of think about incidents. All right, you went through the 101 part of the course. Now let's go into the 102 part of the course. We're going to become cyber preppers. So the first thing we need to do, get management buy-in. This is because, like, you know, Doomsday prepper folks, how many of those folks, like, just were all by themselves on an island? Like, I've got all this crazy stuff. Like, no, most of them had, like, compounds. Like, you know, I got my family. I got, like, Uncle Ben over here. He's real good at reloading ammo. You know, I got my wife, Susan. She's a fantastic gardener. Same way in cybersecurity. You're not a one-man army. You got to have other people. You got to get other people on board to enable you do things, etc. Management buy-in is the most important because, let's be honest, they have the checkbook, and that's what you need a lot of times. You need to look for ways to kind of develop support. The easiest way to do this is to, you know, pull news articles. That's the easy way to do it. Just make people aware of what other folks in your industry are seeing. Kind of get that top of mind for folks. If you want to get like more technical, Mandiant's M-Trends, Verizon's DBIR, Red Canary's Threat Report, CrowdStrike's got one now. They actually go into details on like different types of attack techniques that's being seen in different industries. Great way to get like more support and more people invested in like what you're trying to do. So this is where we get to the meat and potatoes, right? Let's start talking about getting the actual plan. The incident response plan. Listen, all good preppers have a plan. Great ones have contingency plans. Traditional IR plans, in like my opinion, are like really broken because oftentimes, you know, you copy something off the internet, it's not customized for you. You hire like some big four firm, Deloitte or something like that, write this wonderful like 100-page document, and then I can tell you from experience, you get into like an incident, it's like, you got an incident response plan? They're like, yeah. It's like, all right, what does it say? And they're like, we don't know. And a lot of times, if they do read it, it's like, yeah, it's just like a bunch of words. It's shelfware. It's just there to check a box. And a plan that checks a box really just is not any good. So kind of what I've done in my practice building these things out for people is your incident response plan should not be one document. It is actually a library of multiple documents. Partly because, let's think about this. Big books, when you were in college, high school, how many of you guys actually read them? Always a couple in the class. I read Cliff Notes. Listen, I got better things to do with my time. No one wants to read your 80-page incident response plan. But if you have like a bunch of like little tiny like 3-page documents, oh, it's so easy to read. Sign me those all day. I just, you know, go to the bathroom and sit and read them in the bathroom or something. I mean, so let's talk about all the different parts of that incident response plan. You know, you talk about they need to be tiny documents. Like, how do I break them up? So this is the way I kind of break them up. So we have our severity and classification guide, just telling us how to like say like, you know, the incident is a high, a critical, a medium, low. This is all custom to your environment, regulatory stuff, etc. Communication plans. How do I communicate? What are my methods? Who do I communicate with? Kind of using, you know, the old definition of security, which I know we said we weren't going to use earlier. An antivirus alert is an incident, right? If I get an antivirus alert on an end user's machine, should I call the CEO at like 1 a.m. be like, hey, listen, like someone installed like Ask Jeeves browser extension. We got to declare an incident. I'm probably getting fired. I mean, it's just the way it is. So communication plan, how do we communicate with whom, etc. Don't always need to talk to the CEO. Sometimes it's just good enough to talk to the manager. Resources, point of contacts. Who do I need to contact? What's the phone number of my cyber insurance company? A lot of times people don't have that. You get into an incident and be like, all right, who's your cyber insurance provider? Don't know. Or they do know, and it's like, all right, well, we need to go ahead and give them a call so you know you guys can get some help. And they're like, we don't know who to call. No good. Erasing, roles, responsibilities, all that good stuff. You know, I think everyone here has done project management before, right? Erasing's always fun. Knowing your role and who does what and when. Response capabilities, I'm going to come back to in just a second because I got a lot to talk about on that. And this dumb thing hates me. Evidence handling and investigation documents. So think of this more like your traditional playbooks if you have like a SOC. If you are collecting evidence, how not to screw it up so you can actually fire someone and not sue you or anything like that and get their job back. Disaster recovery, business continuity, I'll do a whole nother talk on that. Let's talk to you about response capabilities. So this is something that I like to do that I've never seen done before. So a lot of times I get into incident response scenarios, situations, and it's like, all right, we found this bad IP address doing terrible stuff, right? We need to block it. And the perfect example is I was doing this actually up in North Carolina for a small organization. I was like, we need to block it in your firewall. And they didn't have an IT person. IT person left. They had some good technology that kind of took it over. And I was like, we need to block it in your firewall. And she's like, we don't have a firewall. I was like, no, you're not an IT person. You don't know. You got a firewall, I promise you. She's like, no, we don't have a firewall. I was like, well, show me like where you hook up to the internet. She took me in there, and it was like this ISP switch. And I was like, all right, so where does this connect to? And it literally connected to like the core network, so there's no firewall. I was like, how did this happen? She was like, we had like a contractor setting something up one time, application, said the firewall called too many issues, so we just unplugged it, plugged it into this ISP switch, everything worked. And so I was like, oh, geez, so how am I going to block this IP address? That's what this is for. These incident response capabilities, we like to tie them to indicators, so IP addresses, MAC addresses, domains, things that we typically find as part of incidents that we need to take some action on to contain or clean up. And one might be block IP address. Block IP address, block at the firewall, right? We don't have a firewall. How would you guys block it? Anyone want to take a guess? Well, you could get a firewall, but we're not going to have time. Anyone want to take a guess how else you can block it if you don't have like an edge firewall? ACL, you could do it ACL and switch. In this case, it was like an ISP switch, so that wasn't a thing. But that's one thing you can do. So in the top of your document, here, we block an IP address using the edge firewall. Here's how we do it with the ACL on like a switch or router. In this case, guess what? Windows has this cool thing called host-based firewalls. You can actually do it there and just implement it out that way. So that's another way to do it. A lot of your EDRs, you can block IP addresses, Defender for Endpoint. What you're doing is you're taking an indicator and you're just listing out all the different ways in which you can block it or take action on it. So like, if the adversary takes down your firewall or takes over your EDR, you still have ways to kind of operate in the environment. So number 3, getting back on track, cyber insurance. You got a love-hate relationship with cyber insurance, mostly hate. But that's another talk for another day. Or you can talk to me after this. Cyber insurance, like overall, is a good thing. It helps you pay for incidents. You should totally have it if you can afford it. If you have an incident, you're not going to be able to afford it. But very important to have. You can talk to folks about trying to right-size your policy. A lot of people who sell cyber insurance oftentimes sells you the wrong type of policy that's too big or too small or it's going to screw you over. It's good to try to find people that have some knowledge there. Be sure also to talk to your cyber insurance company about retainers. IR retainers are dead. If there's someone out there still charging you an IR retainer, you're getting ripped off. Partly because there's like this wonderful Verizon data breach a couple years ago. If you have a retainer that do work for you, all that's discoverable, someone can sue you, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So you've got to go through like a breach lawyer. The breach lawyer is paid for by the cyber insurance. So if you've got cyber insurance, call up your cyber insurance company, get a list of preferred providers, do a zero-cost retainer, so it goes through your procurement, everything's all signed. You have a breach, call the insurance company. They get you in touch with the breach lawyer. The breach lawyer goes and he signs the paperwork, reaches out to the person with the zero-cost retainer. All is super easy. Now, get an incident response retainer, which is what I was just talking about. Don't pay for it. Once again, do like the zero-cost retainer if you're going to get it. That is the way to go. Number 5, build relationships. Listen, I've said it multiple times. I'll say it again. The best skill you can have is soft skills in cybersecurity. How am I doing on time? All right. I'll tell you this, the best relationships usually built is actually with help desk, because help desk is like the gossip girls of the IT world. They know everything. Literally everything. I can't tell you how many times I've been able to find security issues before they blow up in my face talking to like help desk people. Like buy them a box of donuts, you know, sitting there talking about like cool TV shows, stuff like that. They'll be talking about like, oh, you know, Ben, someone said something about he got this weird email, clicked on it, and computer acting funny, and it's like bada bing, bada boom, solved. Help desk is like phenomenal. Network engineers, your ISP. So who here works for a large organization that pays a bunch of money for a denial of service like protection? Anyone here? All right, so it costs a crap ton of money, right? A lot of times, like if you just learn an engineer that works at your ISP, take them out to dinner a couple times, they'll do that for free. Like literally, you just buy them lunch and you just like, hey, if someone denies service with me, blah, 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 blah. They just click a button on one of those ISP switches, firewalls, blocks it, saves you like a ton of money every year. So that's one that people like often don't think about. Law enforcement, local law enforcement, FBI. Those are usually good people to have. A lot of people don't like to talk to them, but it's good to know them. HR, because, you know, it's always good to have a friend in HR, right? And then the last step, review, update, and test the plan. Listen, having an incident response plan that's not updated and kept up to date doesn't do any good. The nice thing about breaking it into a bunch of small documents and kind of like I explained, like the severity guide and stuff like that, I hate reading the 80-page document. It's going to take me months to do it. But I can put something on my calendar that says, hey, I'm going to look at the severity guideline and update it. It takes me 5 minutes. I do it. And then the next month I just do another one. It's an evergreen process. I keep it updated year-round kind of as I go. Makes updating it very, very simple. You should review your plans at least once a year in total. Part of the plan should also be run through like an incident response exercise. Congratulations, you're a prepper. You got a merit badge. But you're not a Doomsday prepper. So what are Doomsday cyber scenarios? Ransomware, destructive worms, denial services. You know, I guess you guys saw a bunch of scary stuff yesterday because I'm not getting any reactions. Anything that's pretty much like a resume generating event. Like if you screw it up and it's like, yep, you'll need to update the resume and find a new job after this. That's a Doomsday event, in my opinion. If that's not a Doomsday event, let me know. I want to come work with you. So things to keep in mind with dealing with Doomsday events. Listen, don't panic or react without a plan. Have your IR plan. Ideally, have it somewhere other than network share that might get encrypted and you can't read it. So physical copy, usually sent home with some people in a safe, something like that. Be sure to contact your breach coach, your insurance people. Remember, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Don't just go and be chaotic. Don't go and blame people for the incident, because that's how like your whole team quits. That happened one time. I walked in and it's like the whole IT team's like, we quit, it's not our fault. And I was like, oh, this is not going to be a good day. Yeah, don't cast blame. No one's at fault. If you go through and you start casting blames, emotions already high. People are going to say and do things they regret. It's really, really hard to get Active Directory up when all of your Active Directory engineers like quit and no one knows the passwords. Just saying. The other thing is set realistic like work schedules, like working 24 hours. That's great if you can do it in 24 hours. These things often are marathons, not races. So, you know, keep an 8-hour schedule. Just work it in shifts. 3 8-hour shifts together, 24 hours. Break it up. Little, keep people from like burning out. Make sure that you set objectives, talk to your stakeholders. You know, use the SMART framework. I think everyone's probably heard of that. You just Google SMART goals. It's a good way to kind of like set realistic objectives, talk to your shareholders, things like that. The first thing you need to do when you have these Doomsday events is we need to triage. We need to like determine how bad it is. The way we do this is we have a scoring system. Usually it's based off the classifications. Ransomware, is it this, is it that, number of assets impacted, data classification. There's a lot of different ways to do this. But guess what? Remember how we're talking about parts of your incident response plan? We've already done this work. All right. severity classification guide. Google incident response plans, severity classification frameworks, bunch of them out there. Investigate and collect evidence. So, collecting all this stuff, you need to have SOPs, playbooks. This is especially more true for larger organizations that have SOCs. If you don't have a SOC, you still have some of this. It's just not going to be as detailed and built out, fleshed out. If you're going to pull stuff, pull data in the order of volatility. Or the best thing to do is, you remember that cyber insurance company that we were talking about? Call them, get the actual professionals in, let them do all this. That's really easy too. Our evidence collection and investigation scenario is for simple things like antivirus alerts. We do this, everything else, call on the pros. But that's where that's documented, evidence handling and stuff like that. So sidebars, whenever you're doing stuff, you should be always taking good notes. A couple things to note about notes is good note taking is the best thing you can do. Doesn't matter if it's handwritten or digital. I used to always carry around a voice recorder and just talk like a doctor because I have crappy handwriting and just dictate it later. Whenever you're doing notes, log what time it is. Talk about the 4 W's and the 1 H, so why, what, when, where, how, all that fun jazz. Also keep in mind that if you're sued, notes are discoverable. You can read them on the stand. It's fantastic, especially if you get into a sticky situation. If you're going too fast to take notes, you're going too fast. Once again, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Have time for notes. 3A, declare an incident. So this kind of gets back into what we were talking about earlier. Not anyone can declare an incident probably. You need to communicate it. You need to contact your legal counsel, cyber insurance. All that stuff should really be in the RACI. Who's doing what, how they're doing it. We're probably not let Billy the intern call an incident, declare it. Probably coming from someone else. Communication guide, how we're going to communicate. Resources point of contact, that's going to tell us who we need to contact on the insurance side and everything else. Severity classification also probably plays a role in that because you're not, once again, going to call a lawyer every time you get an AV alert. All right, set up the initial communication. How am I doing on time? 3 minutes. All right, so we're gonna run through this. So communication, out-of-band communication is usually a good thing to have. A lot of different frameworks for communicating things. If you're super interested in how you should communicate stuff, I can give you tons of guidance. We're gonna kind of skip over this just to leave some quick things. Also, if anyone wants a copy of this, let me know. I can email you a copy of this. Peer notification. How many of you guys do business with some other company on behalf of them, manufacture something, whatnot, something? No one? Usually if you're doing business for someone else, especially if you're in manufacturing, a lot of times they've got all these stuff in your contract says if you have an incident, get breach, something like that, you got to notify us. Make sure you have all that stuff buttoned up. Containment, 2 types of containment, short-term, long-term containment. Short-term's like super extreme, pull, disconnect the firewall from the internet. Long-term's kind of more strategic. Response capabilities there, talking more about response capabilities. We kind of talked about that earlier. Eradication, recovery, blah, blah, blah. Disaster recovery, business continuity is your friend here. Root cause analysis, like I said, we're going to run through this. And at the very end of it, you always need to do your hot wash lessons learned so you can improve next time. Whew! All right, so we sped through that. All right, I'm done.